Hi, I'm Mike. I'm from Denver, but I've been living in Italy for quite some time now. I am the Service Learning and Host Family Coordinator for SIS Intercultural Study Abroad. I'm sitting down and I'm going to talk with a lot of people who have experienced the program that we offer in Siena to talk about study abroad in general and what their experiences have meant for the rest of their lives and how they've been impacted by those experiences. So I hope you enjoy these. And if you're interested in having a conversation with me, just go ahead and write to me at my email address that's here below. So enjoy, and hopefully see you all soon back here in Italy. Ciao. Okay, well, here we are again. Now it's 2021. And I am here today with a former student, but also somebody who has quite a lot of experience with intercultural relations. So Ai Doan, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Hi, everybody. My name is Ai, and I attended Siena Italian Studies in fall 2016 as a graduate student at the time through the College of Mount St. Vincent in New York City. And I'm currently a Student Services and University Relations Coordinator at a Study Abroad Institute in Florence, Italy. And we work with US institutions to send students abroad.
Right. Okay. Yes. So very on the same track. I want to ask, did you do any study abroad before you came to SIS in Siena? So you said you came as a graduate student, which of course I remember. Had you gone anywhere else before that?
Yes, so I studied at the University of Arkansas in my undergraduate years, and I studied in Yokohama, Japan, for a semester. And then after I graduated, I lived abroad in South Korea for 2 years, and then I applied for graduate school
Okay.
prior to
Right.
going to
So
Italy.
you had already been to a lot of different places, but as a study abroad student, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
with the next interviews that I do with people in these chats that I have, I
Mhm.
want to talk a little bit more about like working in intercultural relations and things like that. Before I talked mostly just about study abroad experience, and that's fine. I mean, we'll get into
Mhm.
that, but I want to get a little bit deeper into kind of the world of study abroad. What was it like for you? I know what it
Mhm.
was like for me, but what was it like for you to um, have had all these intercultural interactions as a study abroad student, and then to then work in a setting where then you are working with students in the study abroad setting, but you're much more responsible.
Mm. It's a very good question. I reflected on this question for a bit. So I think like studying, from my personal experience, studying abroad with Siena Italian Studies really helped me to be able to look at things in a different perspective, especially when I'm meeting somebody from a different culture and background. And it not only helps me to appreciate that, but being able to learn how to communicate and have like an open dialogue and appreciating, not only the similarities between the two cultures, but also the differences as well. Because prior to going abroad, not only to Italy, but other countries, I was born and raised in a very, in a suburb in
Mhm.
Arkansas. And so I didn't really have the chance. There was not a lot of diversity, present in the community that was raised in. And so I used to be like very scared, very hesitant, rigid, and I was always like afraid to take risk and not open to new experiences. So anything
Mm.
new will kind of like make me like very nervous. But I think like after going abroad and then learning more about intercultural communication, taking classes with Iora and international education with Elena and Lavinia, it
Mm.
really helped me to understand more, knowing that change is good and being able to articulate, when I'm conversing with someone from a different culture, like, oh, this is interesting where this is coming from. You have different viewpoints. Like, how can I learn from that? And being able to work with each other. And so I think that experience really helped me. And now that I'm a study abroad coordinator, I used to work at a university, as I mentioned
Mm.
before with you. I used to work at a university where I worked with 3,000 international students. And so with so many different backgrounds and different cultures, like you have to learn to, be adaptable, be resilient, and open to changes and in
Mm,
dialogues as well. And so the experience at Siena Town Studies, like definitely, and traveling in general, really helped me to be more open to that, to those changes, and being able to enjoy it as well. Like now, with where I'm at right now, like I'm always curious to learn more about people's different cultures, different backgrounds, different viewpoints, and I don't find it scary, or I'm not as like nervous about it as I used to be.
yeah, I think that study. It's really cliche to say that study abroad experiences are very eye opening, but it's
Yeah.
true. Yeah,
It,
like
it really is.
it's a real thing, and I think unless you have done something like that, it doesn't have to only be study abroad. There are ways to expose yourself to different things and different
Mhm.
cultures, other than study abroad, of course. But unless you've done one of those or a study abroad program, it's kind of hard to convey what that means to have an eye-opening
Exactly. Hmm. Hmm.
experience. I know
Hmm.
for me, like I was pretty fortunate in that I had um, actually grown up in a rather diverse situation in the sense that I was exposed to quite a bit of diversity
Hmm.
where I grew up. A lot of that probably because of my parents, they wanted to expose me to that kind of thing.
Hmm.
But it was the American diversity. I remember um, one of the things is realizing that there's other kinds of diversity, which like
Exactly. Hmm.
um, but so it's one thing for the study abroad students to come to that realization, and then it's another thing to be on the other side, like where me and you both are, and to have to help students who are having trouble, and like everybody has trouble at a certain point,
Hmm.
with kind of grappling with dealing with different things.
Hmm.
It can, like I said, it's eye opening, but at the same time, it's can be shocking as well. So, like,
Yes.
how did you or do you kind of help students through those situations? Because it's one thing to say, I know what it feels like. And then it's
Hmm.
another thing to uh, convey that to a student and then make them feel comfortable with dealing with those differences. And
Yes, that's a very good point. And because I had like both experiences, so I worked with international students who struggled with understanding American diversity and just being able to, adapt to like a new environment
mm,
versus, students who are I'm sending them abroad and they're, also curious to learn about different culture, and they struggled when
yeah,
they arrived on site. So I get both perspectives. But with the international, we can start with the international students first. So with the international students, like when they arrived on campus, a lot of them, like I mentioned, come from all over parts of the world: India, Nepal, etc. And so we would give like an orientation, to equip them, prep them, with the stages. And you're probably very familiar with the study
yeah, yeah.
abroad cycle. So we would prep them, we would say, this is, you'll have the honeymoon phase, and then you'll have the culture shock phase, and then you'll settle, etc. And so I think like with my role as the coordinator, I not only, and I think it really helps students when you're able to relate to them. I think that's very important, because if you're just saying, oh, you should do this and this, but you've never gone through the experience, you don't really know, like you can't put yourself in their shoes, and then it's not as easy to understand. Whereas like if you said, hey, like I studied in Italy before, like I definitely know your concerns and where you're coming from, you'll experience this and this and this. It relates them on a more like personal, like connection, like level. And so and even when I, with the international students that I've, met at the university, I would tell them like, oh, I studied in like four or five different countries or live abroad. But at every single country that I went to, I still experienced the same cycle. So you are not alone. And here are
Mm,
the tangible steps that you could take, if you're overcoming homesickness. Here are some suggestions. And so giving them like not only like letting them know that you understand how they feel, but also I would try to like, provide them with practical steps. So if they do get in that stage, because nobody, like every single student's different. and they will go through different phases and experience different things. And so the main point is just to provide them with resources and letting them know here are the support, here are the resources, and here are the tangible steps if you are in that certain, phase. So that's
Yeah,
really
no, that's the thing
mhm.
you said. Like one thing is that credibility, and I use that credibility all the time in the sense
Mhm.
that I can tell a student, look, I was a student on this program, although the program
Yeah.
has evolved so much. I don't even think you can call it at all the same program because it
Mhm.
was such a long time ago. I liked what you said about having the actual steps
Yes.
because
Mhm.
actual tangible things to do. A lot of times I think we can say, I could say, well, I was a student on this program and I'm fine. And then
I got through it. You will too.
that
Yes.
person
Uh-huh.
may not be feeling fine.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so giving them kind of the tangible things, and knowing the culture, I think that's key.
Yes.
Knowing the
Yes.
culture. I mean, for you, obviously having grown up in America and then dealing with international students
Mhm.
coming to America. Okay, so now though you are working with students that you're trying to
Send.
move away, you're trying to get them to go away, right?
Shift them away. Yes. Uh-huh.
What's it like? Because when the students come to us, they've already made that decision. They've already, taken that step, which is a huge step for many of them. Um, I'm not involved in the process of trying to convince anybody to come. I mean, we have to market our program, but
Mhm.
we're not in the process of getting a student who just maybe doesn't want to study abroad to then want to study abroad. What's
Mhm.
that like? Uh,
I think like for my personal and professional experience, students who go through the program, they actually do want to go abroad. But I
mm,
think like the thing that I would try to challenge them, like when they're enrolling and when I'm like doing like pre-departure orientation for them, is trying to get them to go beyond just like, oh, I just want to travel and like learn more about myself and just for leisure reasons other than education. But I want to be able to plant that seed to help them like to travel abroad more intentionally and with a
mm,
purpose. And it could be challenging at times because I'm talking about like, and probably you can relate to Mike, some of the students are so young.
oh, yeah.
They're like super young and they're not at that level to, it may be their first time traveling too. Like I recall when
Mm,
I was a university student traveling to Japan for the first time overseas in my life, I didn't have the intention to like want to just go abroad and try to like find, to go abroad like intentionally. I was excited to go abroad, but I wasn't at that level. Whereas when I was a graduate student going to Italy, I already had a purpose for going abroad, and that was to like, to learn more about the culture. So I think like the challenging part and something that I've been trying to push students, usually in orientation, is to try to get them to learn about Italy, like, giving them exposures about the country and the
mm,
culture that they're going into, and then trying to push them. It's like, hey guys, like I know you're here for education, of course, but besides that, like I encourage you to try to go beyond, like and learn something from the culture and try to explore, with it like in a safe way, of course, to learn
yeah.
more about the culture and expose yourself, and learn more about the locals, converse, like use your Italian and don't be afraid, to take those risk. And so I think that that's something that could be challenging at times because students are different. Some of them they're not at that level to have that intention. And so just planting that seed
Yeah.
anywhere like
It's
during the
hard because I mean, we said to use the metaphor of having your eyes be opened. If your
uh-huh
eyes aren't open to something, that it's hard to explain what that's going to be like.
exactly. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And yeah, and it is possible to travel abroad and not have your eyes open, right? It is possible to
Yes.
just kind of stay
Yes.
within
Mm-hmm.
everything that you know, and you see
Yeah,
different
with the comfort
movies
zone.
and you
Mm-hmm.
hear people speaking a different language, but then you can just be surrounded maybe by your friends or by
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
other people who are from your culture,
Yes.
uh, and it is important to try. get people.
Yes, push them a little bit. Well, of course, we don't want to like just throw them off into like the unknown, but but just like shoving them a little, nudging them a bit, like, hey, go beyond a little bit your comfort zone. You know
Yeah.
what's so special about where you're at right now? Like, what can you do that's like different from what you would normally do in the States? Like, of course, in a safe way. I will always tell students that. But yeah, just nudging them and encouraging them to go out a little bit more than out
Mhm.
of their comfort zone a bit to explore and learn more about the country that they're in. Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think just that like the one of the things that's probably it's not a comforting thing necessarily to say. It's just that you're probably going to have a lot of unexpected
Exactly.
results and outcomes from this, and most of those are probably going to be good,
Mhm.
unexpected results. But mm, that's a tricky thing to kind of tell somebody is like, go over there, do something different, and stuff's going to happen that you don't even like.
Yeah, of course, like we get more specific about
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
No,
so we
I mean,
usually
for
give like
me,
examples. Yeah, go
for
ahead, Mark.
me, definitely. I mean, I went abroad just because, like, other people were going abroad, and the university that I went to, which was Lewis and Clark in Portland, Oregon, just had lots of study abroad programs, and I
Mhm.
was like, well, that I guess traveling's cool. Like, I didn't know about Italy. I didn't know all of the and so I went, and I had that eye-opening experience, and then from then I just realized that it's a very powerful thing to
Mhm.
to experience, and I wanted to share that with people. So that's why I keep working in study abroad. You're around intercultural, or you've been around intercultural
Mhm.
uh, situations all the time, um, and as am I. And so, what is it like? Is it difficult? Is it not difficult? Is it something that you just don't think about anymore? Integrating all of these different cultures into your life, like kind of living in between. It
Mhm.
feels a lot of times like you're never really one culture anymore.
I guess like, in my personal life, I mean, I was born and raised in the States, but my parents are Vietnamese,
Hmm.
Chinese. And
Yeah.
so I felt like I was always kind of like, I feel like I'm in the limbo. Like, when I'm at school, like when I was at school, when I was younger, I was at school, I felt like, oh, I'm an American. But then when I go home, I feel like, oh, I'm just like a Vietnamese daughter or sister. Like,
Hmm.
so it's like a different role I have to like shift. And still like, it's not as drastic as it was like now that I'm living on my own. But I think like with the question, what's like integrating different cultures into my life, like aside from work in my personal life, I think like I always try to proactively seek that experience. I mean, with work, yeah, of course, I work with like, different people from different parts of the world. But in my personal life, sometimes like I could be like in a pilot mode, like you get home from work. And if you don't actively seek out those experiences, it's kind of hard to integrate different cultures into my life. So what I usually do is I would join like meetups, like international meetup groups,
Hmm.
and meet people from different parts of the world. So I joined like a couple years ago. I joined like a Turkish woman group because I don't know anything about Turkey, and I was like, oh, hey, this is something like really random and unique, and it's like cool. Like I want to join the group, and they would cook a lot of dishes, like Turkish dishes, and have tea time and everything. So I joined, and I met like a bunch of people, ladies from like Turkey, and I
Yeah.
was and they were like, wow, you found our group. Like,
And
this
there
is
was probably a lot of people would think that something like that it would be people would be intimidated to if they're not a Turkish woman
yes.
to, to join a group like that. But the people were probably like thrilled, I bet. They're like, sure.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
and actually one of them invited me. Well, I met like it was like a Turkish, I think it was like a Turkish woman like cooking class. And so I joined it once and then one of the ladies there like got my number. It's like, "Hey, why don't you come over and hang out with me and my Turkish friends?"
Hmm.
And they're all very friendly. And so I went to her house and I had tea and they like baked me a bunch of like really like sweet baklava. Yeah. And it was really nice. And I knew nothing about Turkey and they knew nothing about my culture. So we would exchange and talk about like, oh, how's Turkey like? And how did you grow up in a Vietnamese household? So it was really nice and very yeah, very a very meaningful moment. But I don't think I would have necessarily done that if I hadn't like gone abroad and having all
Mm.
those experiences. I think it would be very scary and frightening to me
Yeah.
to just randomly go in like a group, that everybody knows each other, they know about each other's norms and cultures and things like that. But I was really open to it. So I felt really, really happy. We still keep in touch and it's really nice. I got to learn more about them.
Yeah, that is cool. Yeah, when you growing abroad, can't like you learn how to do random stuff, and
That is
random stuff
true.
is actually because when you have to do things, when you have to assimilate to a new culture, like new
Hmm.
culture can seem totally random. Like the things that local customs
Hmm.
can
Hmm.
seem totally random when compared to what you're used to, and then you just find yourself doing those things. And it's
Yes,
like, oh,
yes.
okay, and you discover all kinds of new things when you do random stuff. I too also have found myself um, seeking out to do just more random things
Yeah.
and learn about new random stuff all the
Makes
time.
life, yeah, it makes life more like exciting and fun. So I tell my friends like, oh, I went to a Turkish woman cooking class, and they were like, so random. But okay, whatever floats your boat and you
Yeah.
enjoy it. And I think like, when you ask like, oh, how do you integrate different cultures into your life? I see it as kind of like learning a language that's not commonly used. It's like
Mm,
kind of like a language that, when you don't really commonly use a language, like you have to want to like continue learning the language and practice it, but you need to proactively find ways to continue that. And I think like it's the
mm,
same thing with integrating different cultures into your life. Like, I mean, my job, thankfully, and the job I had previously is like, I was able to communicate with people and meet people from different parts of the world. But in my personal life, like a lot of the people that I meet are, from the US, born and raised in the US. And so if I don't actively go out and seek, different like diversity groups and everything like that, it'll be kind of difficult, like I'll just be hanging out with people from, who are born and raised in the States and the same background, same ethnicity, etc. So
you are going to start working on a podcast, right?
yes.
Yeah. Well, we have a section on our website that's called student blogs, but I mean, I think blogs is probably an old word to use. I started blogs that I wrote pretty constantly on for a couple of years, and then
Hmm.
I really haven't found the time to do much of it. But it's still there, and the idea is there.
Hmm.
So we already have another former student who actually lives in Florence now. She
Oh,
has
nice.
a podcast featured on our website, and so if your podcast gets up and running, we could put a link on our website for you. Talk about it. What is it?
Yeah. So my podcast, I started this podcast during quarantine because I was just like, I had so much free time, Mike. Like I didn't really know what to do with my
Because you
time.
don't
Like
have children, right?
I don't.
Yeah.
I live by myself
The world
too.
is
So
now separated in two: people who had a lot of time and people who were like, what do we
didn't
do
think
with
of that.
these creatures?
Yeah, but I guess I'm stuck on that spectrum where I don't know what to do with myself and my time because I'm an
It's
extrovert too. So it was hard.
neither is good nor bad. It's just the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I had so much free time and I was like, what should I do? And, I had so many things going on in my head. I was like, hey, you know what? I think a podcast would be a good outlet. And also, I want to be able to help those who are going through the same situation. And so my podcast primarily focuses on self care, positivity, well being, and the goal is to help build a community focusing on hope, love, and support. And in the channel, I, want to be able to spread awareness for culture and diversity and mental health, especially during a time where we need it most. And
Yeah.
so for 2021, I started, drafting some of the script and everything, but I plan to share some hopeful stories on what we can anticipate when things do get better, and traveling is
Mm.
part of that. And so I want to share about, and also like I want to retell my stories where I've been abroad. I feel like I don't want to forget those journey and the moments that I've been where I've been in. So I want to retell the stories through the series. So it'll be like a travel series, a story
Okay.
of where I've been, and it will talk about like just it's a story that will share about my impressions and retelling them about like what did I experience there, what did I eat, like who did I meet, and I want to just be able to through those stories I want to be able to advocate for studying abroad just beyond like I mentioned to like mentioned earlier, beyond just like for leisure, but traveling more intentionally
Mhm.
when we do go back again.
But that's a really good idea. Honestly, frankly, I think that these conversations should probably be a podcast. But I need to figure out how to do all the equipment and do the editing on that.
Yeah,
And for
actually,
now,
yeah,
that's what I'm doing. But I don't know. Maybe we'll
yeah,
see.
I thought about that too. And it'd be nice. You could add like music in the background. That's what
I
I've been
know.
doing. It's really fun. It takes up a lot of time, but it like in a very productive way. You feel very accomplished.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, I. This was great.
Yeah,
Um,
thank you.
and yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I'll see you in Florence sometime soon.
Yes, I hope to travel. Like I thank you for allowing me to like, share my story and answer some of the questions. Like as I was telling the story, it like made me nostalgic. I was like, I miss Sienna so much. Like I miss all the staff, the school building, and my host family. Like when I tell stories to the students, like I always go back, like, I would share with them, like, how did I live in Italy? Like coming home, seeing my host parents, and
Mhm.
every day they would ask me, "Hi, cómo stai? How are you? Talk to us about your life." And I'm here, like, I have so many things to do. I need to like work on this and this, and it was like it's cute, yeah. All
Thank you.
right, really. Bye, Mike.
Wow. Bye
Yes.
bye.
Ciao.